Good evening. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Arlington Select Board on January 13th, 2025. I'm Select Board Chair Steve DeCourcy, beginning with board members joining me tonight.
John Hurd.
Eric Helmuth.
Diane Mahan.
Leonard Diggins.
James Feeney, Town Manager.
Michael Cunningham, Town Council.
Ashley Marr, Board Administrator.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format consistent with provisions in state law for remote participation in public meetings. Before we begin, please note the following. This meeting is being conducted in the Select Board chambers and over Zoom. It is being recorded and simultaneously broadcasted on ACMi. People wishing to join the meeting by Zoom may find information on how to do so on the town's website. People participating, either in person or by Zoom, are reminded that you may be visible to others and that if you wish to participate, we ask you to provide your full name and place of residence in the interest of developing a record of the meeting. Both Zoom participants and persons watching on ACMi can follow the posted agenda materials found on the town's website, specifically the Select Board agenda and minutes page. If technical difficulties sever the remote connection to one or more participants and efforts to reconnect within a reasonable period of time fail, the in-person meeting will continue at the discretion of the chair, provided that a quorum of the board is physically present. Zoom participants are encouraged to retain the phone number provided in their confirmation email for a backup audio connection to the meeting. There will be an opportunity for public comment this evening during our open forum. If you're attending by Zoom and want to participate, please raise your hand when I announce that public comment is open. This is our first meeting of calendar year 2025. Let's see how much of the town's business we can get done tonight. And with that, I will move on to the consent agenda. Several items. Item 2 is the minutes of the meetings December 4th, 2024 and December 16th, 2024. Item 3 is a contractor drain layer renewal for A. Cardillo and Son. Item 4 is acceptance of funds from Lael Smith for the Order of St. Anne. Item 5 is acceptance of funds from various entities through the libraries. It's Anna Litton, Director of Libraries. Item 6 is Mass Save Community First Partnership Grant for Electrify Arlington program. And item 7 is a request for a special one-day beer and wine license on January 18th, 2025 at Robbins Memorial Town Hall for a private event. I'll turn to board members.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Second that, I'd like to add my gratitude to the Order of St. Anne and also the individual donors who just unsolicited decided to support the library, and the Order of St. Anne made a substantial donation to support the fire department. And you know, it's really heartwarming to know that people in the community see the good work that those organizations do, and we're very fortunate to have their generosity.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Further comments? Mr. Diggins.
And I'll add to that. I mean, the grant that we got from Mass Save is appreciated too, and I'm kind of interested in the incentives. I mean, but I can talk with the town manager or Ms. Fox about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay, on a motion for approval by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of the cake. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that does it with the consent agenda. My apologies to Mr. Helmuth. Item 8, under appointments, Arlington Bicycle Advisory Committee, Len Greenberg, for a term to expire January 31st, 2028. Is Mr. Greenberg with us tonight? Oh, if you could come up. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your interest. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in serving on the committee.
Sure. I'm Leonard Greenberg. I live at 106 Wildwood. I have been an Arlington resident for about 35 years. You know, part of wanting to be on the committee is that I feel like I owe something back to this town because I feel like it's a good town and it's been good to me. I have attended as an at-large member rather than a voting member of the committee for the last couple of years. I think what the committee does is important. I'm a cyclist. You know, I feel like I have something to contribute as somebody who's been here for a while and who is out on the roads a bunch and sees things that are worth doing.
Okay, now, thank you very much. I'll turn to board members. Mr. Diggins.
I'll motion approval, and if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Sure.
You know, your resume is impressive, you know, but on the employment, I'm just curious, what's the pattern, you know, to the way you listed your employment? We have a little time, so.
Sure. So I'm a psychologist. I have worked part-time a lot of places.
Yeah.
I've also consulted a lot of places. So it gets complicated to give a straightforward narrative about here.
Yeah.
So I think that probably is why things look like they jump around a little bit on you.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the variety, and I was just trying to figure out the sequence, and it's like, oh, there's no real apparent pattern here, but maybe there is, so we have time, so I had to
One of the
ask.
fortunate things about being a psychologist is you can do lots of different things, and it's given me an opportunity to work in a bunch of different places and do different things. So I feel fortunate in my career and the opportunities it's given me.
Yeah, definitely, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you. If I could, Mr. Chair, just ask a question of the applicant on the substance of the appointment.
Sure.
Dr. Greenberg, thank you for your willingness to serve. I love the reason you articulated that you want to give back. It's one of the things that makes Arlington such a wonderful community. Do you have any particular interest in what topics you might want to explore or develop as a member of the committee?
So, I mean, safety is a special consideration for me. I had at least one significant bicycle accident in Arlington, and feel like, part about wanting to give back about that is to be mindful about places where safety is an issue. My office, since COVID, I've been operating at home, but prior to that, my office was in Lexington. I commuted to Lexington, about 50% of the time on my bike. And just felt like I had experience being out there on the road a bunch, and I feel like that is something that, I can give to the community.
Thank you. Do we need a second? Or
I'm waiting, if you would like.
Happily second the.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. On a motion by Mr. Diggins, seconded by Mr. Helmuth, for approval of Mr. Greenberg's appointment to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, and thank you again for your willingness to serve.
Thank you very much.
Item 9, appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Associate Member Bradley Baranowski, for a term to expire January 31st, 2028. Mr. Baranowski.
Hello.
Good evening. Yeah, and it's nice to see you again. Mr. Hurd and I had talked to Mr. Baranowski, so if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself for the full board's benefit and why you're interested in serving on the ZBA.
Yeah, so I'm a law professor at Boston University School of Law. I've been teaching there for now this is my second semester, so I'm loving it, for the record. I've lived in Arlington with my wife now for 2 years. So that's kind of how I landed here in kind of the high level. Specifically why I'm interested in the zoning board is I'm, like the previous appointee, interested in serving. The background of that is I actually grew up in a really small town in Northeast Ohio, and my dad was mayor for 16 years. And so I spent basically most school nights either doing my homework or watching him do something with the town, including dealing with zoning issues. So it's always been interesting to me in terms of the inner workings of local government. I noticed that the Zoning Board of Appeals had an opening and particularly had a need, it looked like, at least on the posting, for more lawyer members. I have an interest in administrative law. That's what I teach at Boston University School of Law. I felt like there was some connection there that would help to navigate zoning board issues. I've been to zoning board, the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, and I've also clerked, so I have some familiarity with judicial writing as well. So that's me, that's why I'm here, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you very much. And again, we enjoyed speaking with you earlier and learning a little bit more tonight. So with that, I'll turn to Mr. Hurd.
Yeah, I'd be happy to move approval. We had a nice conversation, and you certainly have the enthusiasm, and glad to have your experience on the zoning board of appeals. It's always good to have as many lawyers around as you can, right?
Vis-a-vis
There's a
this
few people in
board.
agreement on that one.
I tell my students that every day.
That's right.
But again, I was impressed by your enthusiasm and willingness to step up. You obviously have a busy life, but this is, it's a big commitment, the zoning board of appeals, but I think you understood that when we talked, so happy to move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Mrs. Mahan?
I certainly will second it, and also thank you to your spouse, your wife, for also joining you in this endeavor, because as with many committees and commissions, sort of waxes and wanes, but certainly the zoning board of appeals. One of the things I'm really impressed by is your experience, as well as your teaching and best oralist, and on one of your accreditations in there, in the sense that, having gone to some zoning board of appeal meetings, I'm very excited by the fact that you do have a law background, as we do have representation also here on this board. But then also, what you've just briefly articulated tonight and have seen, that your working knowledge of law is certainly tantamount, but also when dealing with consultants and more specifically also Arlington residents. That's another area of expertise that sometimes the two don't mesh. And from speaking to my colleagues and reading what you submitted and seeing you here tonight, I know you'll have a good grasp of that. Because a lot of times, I think, sometimes, a lot of times, misunderstandings is just because not all the information is known. And I definitely feel you'll do a good job in doing that. And anything you got, I wish you well.
I try to communicate well with my students, and so you should go to them to see how well I'm succeeding.
But thank you, I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Diggins?
Yes, thank you for your willingness to do this, and I think that you and Mr. Hanlon are going to get along very, very well. So he's a great member of the board. Everyone on that board is great, but there's something about you that reminds me of him, and I just think you two are going to do very well on the board. And I see that you gave us some selected publications that are impressive in and of themselves. Like, how many more do you have?
So I have a lot of book reviews, which I've done throughout my career. In part, this is on the record, but I'll say it anyway, because you get a free book, and so the only thing you do is have to review the book, and so I always feel like I want to read the book anyway, so why not write a little review? So I've done a lot of that. I've done so I did a PhD in history before going to law school, so a lot of the other publications deal with more historical things, and so my resume now, because I'm in the law world more, is much more geared towards speaking to lawyers. And so the book reviews and other writings are more dealing with historical issues. And so that's why I mostly don't talk about them as much. But they're basically stuff on book reviews on American intellectual history, political history, and it's actually stuff about legal history as well. But it's just a list of those kind of things.
I have more of a research biology background and some computer stuff and video stuff. So this is I feel that I can learn a lot from this. I'm going to pick one of these and read them and then get back to you. So
You'll be able to see how well I communicate, and you can maybe make the judge on it.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. Okay, so on a motion for approval by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mrs. Mahan, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you again for your willingness, and as I said, I enjoyed talking to you and learning about you more this evening.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to licenses and permits. We're going to have two items together. Items 10 and 11 for approval. A wine and malt alcohol license transfer, University Theater PB LLC, Regent Theater. And item 11 is a public entertainment license transfer, University Theater PB LLC. And I believe Mr. Stein is here, Mr. Milan? Malin. Yeah, if you could come on up.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nice to see you. And we just, if you could just We know this is a transfer of the license for the Regent Theater. It's 2 licenses. Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the application.
Sure. I recently took over as the new operator of the Regent Theater. I've been mentored for the past couple of months by Rick Stavros, who's been retiring after 30-some years. Leland will wonderfully be staying on as our Director of Programming and Community Relations, as well as our bar manager. And my vision for this space is to continue the legacy that has been the Regent since 1916. And among my own hopes, given my background, which is that of a computer science professor down the road at Harvard by day, to introduce as best we can all the more educational programming into the space, so as to bring audiences in from the local community and beyond for things more educational as well.
Great. Thank you. And I'll turn to board members. Question? Mrs. Mahan?
I know we're doing both at the same time, but I'm pretty sure we have to do 2 separate motions.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
I feel like I know you, considering some of the pre-news media that I've been reading and hearing about. And Leland, Mr. Stein, I think it's great when I hear you on WBZ AM radio. I think that's a great way to go. I know you may not have an answer to this question right now. First, I'd like to move approval for the wine and malt alcohol license transfer. But I'm just wondering, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine, because you're not official till tonight, but with the 250th celebration coming up in Arlington, partnering with Lexington, Concord, et cetera, is that something you're thinking about, have thought about? I don't know how the Regent might play into that.
Yeah, a little bit. In my first days, or just prior to the changeover, I sat in on my first Chamber of Commerce meeting. Katie and others were there, and we got to chatting a little bit about that. We started brainstorming ideas of maybe some old film programming that we could play in the space to let passersby come in, enjoy a glimpse of the past, whatever footage we can come up with historically. Beyond that, we just started to brainstorm, but would welcome ideas and input. But it sounds like a great way to connect all the more with the community.
Yeah, and I've always said, and Mr. Hurd is our representative to that committee, so he'd be a great resource for that. But I remember when I first got involved in politics, when I would go to meetings up in Lexington on Battle Road way back when, I would always say to them, how do you get so many tourists up here in Lexington? What's the secret formula? And their question to me was, how do you have so many great restaurants in Arlington? What was the secret formula to that? And then the big thing I was told with the tourism was parking, getting in touch with the transportation companies, especially the bus companies, and having a place for them to park. And they noted the only place really to park is behind where you are, behind St. Agnes, a municipal parking lot. So maybe you can, and thinking about that and other events, really tie into that, because I think that's an untapped resource. And that's just extending, not so much with flag companies, with hotels, but that's the way to go, but also with the bus companies and tourism companies to get them. And the only other place that they stop here in Arlington is the Schwam Mill, because, again, the buses can make the turn there. So just wanted to pass that on to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Love the idea.
Yeah, I'm very excited about what you're going to bring, and I'm glad Leland is continuing on.
Me too.
He's also a great advocate for the Regent Theater, which I'm so thrilled that it's been able to continue on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Hurd?
Thank you. Are you going to dress up for the kids' events like Leland does?
I have seen photos online of what's ahead of me, yeah.
That's sort of the heart of the region.
Yeah.
But, I'm really happy to hear that you're taking over this endeavor. The Regent Theater has, been part of my life, just about most of my life. I went to Arlington Catholic, so spent a lot of time there in high school, and then it's always nice to bring the kids there to different events that the Regent offers. So it's a great resource for the town. It's sort of a walk back in time when you go back in there in a good way. And I think the Regent in the past few years has made a lot of steps to sort of modernize what they offer to patrons and, bring it to an area that, it's for artists that don't always have a place to be. And so, it's an eclectic group of offerings, and it's really a great place in Arlington, and happy to see that you'll continue that tradition. So happy to second that.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Any other comments? Mr. Helmuth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noted that in the fire department's report that there was a failure of an annual inspection last December, so I wonder if I could suggest a friendly amendment to the motion that would make this contingent on passing the subsequent inspection that's I assume it is scheduled.
Okay, so amended, yes, thank you.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I could, yeah,
Sure,
because I was
no.
going to ask you about that as well. What has happened since December?
Yes, indeed. Deputy Kelly came by on December 31st, and we actually did pass since then, and I forwarded to
Oh, good.
Britton in the Select Board's office our most recent certificate that he gave us that day.
Okay, all right. And there may be, in addition to the fire department, maybe some issues with inspectional services coming through as well. So I think it may be a further friendly amendment, it's all conditions here.
Subject to
but-
all
yeah,
conditions
yeah.
and amendments contained therein.
And just would encourage you, because some of the things are, signage type things, some of them is just removing some things from, that doesn't seem like it's gonna be a major issue, but important to us because we're talking fire safety issues and issues for the public. So if, to the extent that you haven't gotten things done with inspectional services, if you can get that done this week, that would be great.
Yeah, I think I played phone tag with Steve in Inspectional Services this morning and hoping to line up the follow-up this week.
Okay, great, okay. All right, so on a motion, this is item 10 first for the motion. A motion for approval by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is successful. Now, item 11, this facility has a public entertainment license, so similar to the wine and malt alcohol license is a transfer request. Mr. Hurd?
Motion to approve,
Second.
subject to all conditions.
Great. Any further comments or questions? All right, so on a motion for approval by Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mrs. Mahan, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Best of luck, and the programming looks really exciting in terms of what you're looking to do, and it's interested to read about your experience at Harvard too, and everything you're doing there.
Yeah,
Best
looking
of
forward to
luck.
it. Thank you for having us.
Can I just add a couple of things? You want me to
Yeah, if you want to add a few things, Mr. Tan, yeah, happy to have you up here.
take much time, but
Sure.
it's hard for me to remain silent. So, no, I just wanted to say, first of all, to thank the Select Board in issuing the special alcohol licenses for theaters any number of years ago. I can't remember what happened in those years before COVID, but it really, I can't thank the town enough, because it really, without that license, I don't know that we would have survived all these years. I don't know how we did beforehand with the one-day licenses and so forth, but I just want to say, as an Arlington resident for now 44 years, I don't know when I'm considered a townie, maybe when I get to 50 years here, but it's just been a pleasure to be at the Regent for the past 23 years now, and I'm very happy to have David on board, who is very keen on continuing the legacy, but also to add his own imprint on things, and not to put a damper on things, but add to the quality of what the Regent Theater offers.
Great. And thank you very much, Mr. Stein, and for your work over the years, really making that a venue that people want to go see programming, and all the acts and movies, and how you've grown it and over the years as well.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Item 12, for approval, common vitular license, K-Long Lucky Dragon at 90 Lowell Street. If there's a representative of the applicant who would like to come up and address the board? Oh, by Zoom?
Yes.
Okay,
They'll be joining us at Penn in just a minute.
okay.
Excuse me.
Good evening. I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can identify yourself and just tell us about the application and what your plans are for the new restaurant. We're having a little bit of trouble with this.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yep.
Oh, hi. My name is Nancy, and my husband is right next to me. And
我如果錄老公，
and
我檢討個仔嘅工人，我要錄老外表我檢討個仔。
we have a lawyer represent us.
Sure, okay, yeah, he's just been promoted, okay. Good evening.
Sorry about that. I apologize. I had some difficulty getting on. My name is Attorney Russell Chin. I'm here representing K Long Inc., the applicant. And you heard briefly from Mr. Wong as well as Ms. Chen. They are officers and directors of the corporation that's applying for the licenses with you. They are asking for permission to open a restaurant at 90 Lowell Street. It's a small takeout Asian food restaurant, approximately 800 square feet. They would be serving lunch and dinner. They did have a previous location at 14 Medford Street in Arlington that they operated for a number of years, and they have now renovated and are looking to open at 90 Lowell Street. They have provided their certificates for food safety, sanitation, and allergy safe, excuse me. So they do both have experience in operating Chinese restaurants. This is quite a small restaurant. It's only 4 seats, going to be primarily takeout, obviously. And they're happy to answer any questions, as am I, that the board may have.
Thank you very much, and I will now turn to board members with any questions or comments or motions. Mrs. Mahan?
First, I'd like to move approval, subject to all conditions as contained from our various departments. And to that end, just to follow up sort of as before, we do have a report from the fire department that this particular establishment has an open building permit because on the day they were scheduled for the inspection and testing of the ANSEL systems, the gas wasn't hooked up, so the fire department couldn't run the fire alarm nor run the ANSEL system tests. I was wondering if you could speak to that, if learned counsel, if your clients are aware of that and have or will take steps to effectuate that, because the approval, if the rest of the board agrees, is conditional upon that, and thank you.
Absolutely. We understand that any approval by this board would be conditional upon the various inspections by the authorities. This has been a long process to open this particular location. There was a number of construction issues that they encountered with the landlord, and actually it's been going on almost a year and a half, I think, to get this open. So I'm not surprised to hear that there was a snafu with getting the gas turned on for the inspection. My office is working closely with this applicant because of the language difficulties or barriers that there may be. So we will continue to work closely with them and with the town authorities to make sure that appointments are kept and gas is turned on and things like that going forward.
Okay, and I certainly look forward to them reopening. I still have Lucky Dragon in my cell phone. And I know it's the same phone number, because every time I've driven by that particular area where Park Ave or West Salon is, I've seen it, so I've been waiting for your reopening. It was a wonderful establishment, as well as employees that worked on Medford Street. Always very friendly, and so I look forward to your new location and them reopening, but certainly it seems like the most pressing one is from the fire department, so that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Diggins?
I'll second. No questions.
Okay, all right. Great, so we have a motion for approval by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is approved, and I want to wish Mr. Wong the best of luck at the new location.
Thank you very much for your time and attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next this evening is open forum. Except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented for consideration of the board shall neither be acted upon nor a decision made the night of the presentation in accordance with the policy under which the open forum was established. It should be noted that there is a 3-minute time limit to present a concern or a request. Is there anybody in the chambers who wishes to be heard during open forum? Hi. Oh, yeah, come right up to the microphone.
I have been a resident at Arlington Heights for 3 years now, and have a brief message to share with my town select board here. Yeah, so as a religious freedom advocate and a practitioner of Falun Gong, I experienced police interrogation and internet censorship while I was in China. I'm deeply grateful that to live under the protection of freedom in the United States, and obviously our warm and friendly Arlington community. But however, I do wish to express my concern about the Chinese Communist Party's transnational repression, extending their reach to dissidents like me and our diaspora in the United States. So, for example, last year, my friend Ms. Jian Wang, an elderly practitioner of Falun Gong, suffered hate crime while meditating on public sidewalk in front of MIT. So, 2 individuals violently destroyed her setup and poster displays, where that was her effort to bring public attention to the human rights atrocities that still exist in China today. So she reported the incident to the FBI. And for those of you who may not know Falun Gong, the practice has gained tremendous popularity in China in the 1990s in a very short period of time. So to about 100 million practitioners as by Chinese government estimates. Such widespread popularity, however, was not tolerated by the Chinese government, especially when a civil society that has more devotion to their faith than to the communist ideology. So a brutal campaign of violence, imprisonment, torture, and killing was launched to wipe out the practice, as well as disinformation to defame and demonize the group, and to shut off any possible channels of appeal for justice. And moreover, the CCP has employed various forms of transnational repression on the United States soil for many years. For instance, when I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal a few years ago, I noticed some paid advertisement insert pages there containing materials from China Daily, a CCP mouthpiece. And these pages contain propaganda targeting Falun Gong and the Shenyun performing arts, an art troupe founded by Falun Gong practitioners. And these advertisement inserts aim to, I think, mislead American readers and present negative images of dissidents and adversary groups. And other tactics of transnational repression include physical assaults, vandalism, lawfare, secret Chinese police stations, Operation Fox Hunts, to name just a few. All these are total disregard for the sovereignty of this country and undermine our democratic value and freedom. So therefore, I've come before you to express my concerns in the hope that what I share will help my community to gain awareness of the various covert operations the CCP is conducting that might not be obvious on the surface. And I also invite everyone here to go and experience the Shenyun Show, which offers a glimpse into a China before communism that celebrates the rich, beautiful cultural heritage of the Chinese people, distinct from the communist culture of communist China today. And thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts, and I wish you a happy and prosperous new year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard in the chamber?
We're just friends of him. I'm not resident, but I'm not sure if we are allowed to give some materials to speak something.
Yeah, certainly.
Maybe leave those with.
Yeah, actually, if you wouldn't mind, you can leave them with Ms. Marr, and then she'll give it to us after the meeting.
Yeah, so I can speak something.
Okay.
You want to sit?
Yeah,
Thank you so
right
much.
at the microphone, sure.
Actually, I'm not prepared to do a speech here, but I appreciate you guys giving me a kind of this chance. Actually, I'm a Canadian. I immigrated to Canada about 15 years ago. And then 5 years ago, I moved to US. And now I live in Newton. But I'm also a Falun Gong practitioner. The gentleman learner is my friend. So I think this issue is kind of is a destroy for the root of the U.S. Constitution of religious freedom and the protection for human rights, because we are kind of escaped from China, because the persecution is already 25 years. We suffered a lot back in China, and there's still millions of practitioners there. They're still suffering. Even the organ harvesting, I'm not sure if you heard about that. So now, the Chinese Communist Party did try to extend this persecution internationally, and especially in U.S., because they fear that if U.S. government kind of support us, and their crime will be released to the whole world. So they try to use kind of spy and illegal agent to control U.S. kind of the social media, use the legal weapon to move their persecution to U.S. And they may try to eradicate Falun Gong in U.S. as well. So I think it's a threat for all of us, because today they maybe want to do some, I don't know how to say that, because you cannot imagine what bad things they can do is exceed our expectation. Today, they may use the social media, and they may be liar to all the communities, and then we kind of like suffer discrimination and maybe misunderstanding. So no one can speak out for the practitioners in China. And maybe in the future, we are worried if we can still enjoy the freedom of speech, of our religious, of our faith here in U.S. It's kind of a threat for us now, but we think maybe this threat, this risk will be extended all over. I think it's important for everyone to know about the truth and to support us and to stop the persecution as soon as possible. And today, we call for help from all the U.S. Different levels of government. So this will be great help for the Falun Gong practitioners all over the world. And we also volunteer for the performing arts, the Shen Yun. It's a wonderful show, but now it's kind of like under attack. But actually, the CCP tried to suppress this performing many years ago, since the very beginning. They send threatened email and letters to the theater and to try to stop this performing arts. Why? It's just a show. It's just a dance and music. Because some of the programs release the truth of the persecution. That's why. So, sorry, I take so much time.
This evening.
Thank you for your
and looking at-
attention. Thank you.
Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to be heard for open forum?
Seeing no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, that can,
There was one and then.
There was,
Now there's another,
I
and
think-
now it's down.
I think they're trying.
I think
just-
they're trying as well.
Yeah, I think so, I think.
Can I-
okay, yeah, let's try to,
Excuse me.
Hi there, my name is Kristen Anderson. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 11 and also a member of Save the Alewife Brook. And I just wanted to thank the select board and the town manager and town council for all of the work that you have done in the last year to help move the new plan to eliminate sewage pollution from Alewife Brook. You've done quite a lot, and I am here this evening to ask for some additional support. A week from Wednesday, which is January 22nd, at 6 p.m., there will be another large public CSO meeting. And it is critical that someone from the town is there, preferably someone from the board or the town manager, to speak on behalf of the community. It is at this meeting that the topic of finance and cost will be raised. And we recently received an email from the MWRA advisory board. And in this email, they lead the reader to believe that lots of great work has been done and that there does not need to be any more work done. And I'm very concerned about this. And we have asked the cities and the MWRA. We even emailed the director of the MWRA, Fred Lasky, asking if we could have 5 to 10 minutes to speak to explain to everyone what the conditions are and how disastrous the situation is with the untreated sewage flooding from the brook into the path and into people's yards and homes. And so far, the message that we're receiving is that we're not going to be given the opportunity to speak. So I asked the board to represent at this meeting and to let the MWRA know that it is critical that a solution to the problem of sewage pollution and flooding is created. And that's it. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is anybody else on Zoom?
No hands.
Okay, all right, that concludes open forum for this evening. Moving on to traffic rules and orders and other business. Item 13 for discussion and potential vote alcohol policy changes. And I just want to introduce this discussion. We don't necessarily need to have a vote tonight, but this goes back to our joint meeting with the redevelopment board back on September 16th, 2024. And there were two alcohol policy regulations that we had that were raised as concerns from the redevelopment board, from planning, and I think some of us have heard directly from individuals across town. And namely, it's the requirement that establishments, after serving 2 drinks, a patron is required to order food at a restaurant. The other issue is the number of seats that are required for all alcohol licenses. And so just to, what we've done in the agenda is we've put our alcohol policy and regulations, attached it to the agenda. We've then also included page 4 from those regulations, which is included there. That talks about the seat requirements. So an all alcohol license requires a minimum seating capacity of 50. Wine and malt beverage licenses require minimum seating of 19. The second page that we highlighted, language for discussion. We're not limited to these 2 pages, but this is what had come out from that discussion. And again, rather than paraphrase, I'll read directly. Page 7 discusses service of food, and it states food service must be available in all areas in which alcoholic beverages are served. And here's the part that next sentence was the one that has been a point of discussion the past several months. No more than 2 alcoholic beverages per person may be served without food. After 2 alcoholic beverages have been served and consumed, a third such beverage may be served only with the delivery of food. So that's where we were. I think there was some, in a follow-up discussion we had as a board, there was some willingness to revisit certainly the food requirement and maybe have a further discussion on the seat requirement. So with that as a backdrop, we'll start a discussion, and board members want to comment on that. Mr. Hurd.
Well, unfortunately, we never got a chance to convene our subcommittee on this topic.
We did it separately, but we didn't do it as a subcommittee.
We do it post-vote to get reactions from some of the establishments, but yeah, I mean, these are 2 things that, you know, the seating capacity issue never really came up in my mind, because I guess as a patron, you don't think about it. I think Katie Lazai has put a pretty impressive memo together, which compares Arlington to some of the other towns. And, you know, I see some of them have 12, 18, some of them have no minimum. I mean, I think the difference between 12 and 4 seats is really minimal to me. I think, you know, Arlington has all varying types of businesses. We just approved somebody with 4 seats. So I think, you know, from my opinion, I would favor just having no requirement, because I think that's just gives us more flexibility. And then the same thing with the 2-drink minimum. I don't think it's enforced really anyways. I mean, restaurants essentially have to self-enforce that rule. And I think what's in the memo and what we've talked about in these discussions is, you know, regardless of the regulations, you know, any establishment that serves alcohol has a duty to make sure they're doing it responsibly and they're not serving people that are intoxicated and not serving minors. And those are the safety regulations that are much more important than kind of the 2-drink minimum, which I think, you know, came up at a time where Arlington was slowly rolling from a dry town, as people say, to what it is now. And I think it had a place at at one point in our history, but I think that no longer really makes much sense in our policies. So, I mean, I'd be happy to, whether it be today or if other board members want to take some time to talk to residents and businesses, I'm happy with that too, but I'd be happy to make those 2 changes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurd. And before I turn to Mrs. Mahan, I do want to recognize the memo we received today from Ms. Lucia, our Economic Development Coordinator, supporting changes to both of those policies. So with that, I'll turn to Mrs. Mahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to Mr. Hurd, I'd definitely be prepared to move forward on 1, if not 2, of the highlighted joint discussion points that we had with the redevelopment board. The easiest one first, the 2-drink minimum. Honest to goodness, I remember when this discussion came up and Mrs. Dice had some concerns, and from that discussion amongst the then board and colleagues, from whence that came. And I think one of the benefits this board has that Mrs. Dias and that board didn't have was they were just embarking on having alcohol in restaurants and hadn't really been tested. But we certainly had a couple of decades of this now. So I'd be happy to, but I want to hear from the rest of the board, certainly on that one, maybe perhaps moving forward, if after the discussion, if Mr. Hurd or the chair senses that there's some unanimity or something on that. I'll certainly second that motion. And then the other one is regarding the seating capacity. I'm assuming Ms. Lusai means when she talked about the different cities and towns that do have seating capacities, and said the city of Cambridge allows its select board to set the number. You know how I am, Mr. Feeney, with town, something went up on the town webpage that said if you want to learn more about the city, and it just irks me. So ask anyone. To me, it's a demonstration. If I was moving forward on something in the future, I would always remember that now. And it doesn't say, I think the city of Cambridge, I don't think the city council sets the minimum number of seats. I believe their planning commission does, but I could be wrong on that. On that particular point, I digress on that. I'm sorry. I'm beating a select board city council nomenclature. I, coming into the meeting tonight, was of the opinion to have a minimum of 12. And thinking perhaps, and we don't have, as you say, Mr. Chair, I'll let you get a sense of the board where they want to go with that. And then perhaps again, revisit it again in the future, regardless if I'm on the select board or not. I'm not, putting my pole in the stand on the hill on that, but I just would like to hear from my colleagues, because I'm certainly open to perhaps not having a minimum at all, but for myself personally, I think I liked what the city of Somerville was doing with a minimum of 12 seats. So that's where I would fall on that. So I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chair, whether we vote on one or both, and my colleagues where they stand on either one of those issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Helmuth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate what I've learned from my colleagues. I would just format right now, I'd be very happy to dispense with the requirement that you serve food on the third drink. I think that's vaguely defined. I think Ms. Lusai makes a pretty compelling case that's really hard to interpret that, and that, I think from what I've learned and doing some research on this, it's not easily or even enforced at all. I wouldn't be prepared, I'd prefer not to vote yet on the minimums. I think I do agree with Mrs. Mahan that there may be merit to having a minimum. I'd like to know what Cambridge's current minimum is, not just the fact that there's not a statutory limitation. So I think maybe we can tighten up some of that research. That would be useful. I'd also like to understand, and if anybody here, including the town manager or another board member, could enlighten me, just understanding in the real world, what would likely change if we relaxed the number of seats in terms of what kinds of businesses we could expect to see in Arlington. And the reason I ask that is twofold. One would be if there's opportunities for economic growth and support local businesses, that can be a positive. On the other hand, if reducing or eliminating the number of seats could open the door to the kinds of establishments that maybe the community doesn't want, like just a very small bar, for instance. And I don't know if the community wants that or not, but I suspect that may have had something to do with the minimums to begin with. So and this is really an opportunity to see if anybody here can kind of further our understanding of just how that worked, what the intent of that might have been, how that would work out in practice. Should we eliminate the number already or reduce it down to, a very small number?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Helmuth. I don't know if Mr. Feeney has any information just in terms of the seat minimum, what, if anything, that has done to potential tenants that have come to look at town. If there's anything you can share with us, or we can come back and discuss that as well.
If he does, that's fine. If not, that's fine. We can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I would say is, one point is that I think there are potentially existing businesses in operation that have wine and malt licenses that would wish to upgrade, for lack of a better word, to all alcohol licenses, but that do not have the minimum number of seats to qualify for that license. So that is that I can say with conviction is true, because we actually have existing licensees who have reached out and who we've essentially turned away to say, gee, sorry, you don't meet the minimum seating threshold. And, I think there's instances where, an establishment may serve some sort of ethnic cuisine, perhaps, and take a Japanese restaurant, for example, they may wish to serve sake as part of a cultural tradition, but are unable to because they would require an all-alcohol license. So I think there's at least a few instances where you would be providing additional economic development opportunity to existing businesses. I can't say I have an existing example with respect to what type of establishment may land in a presently unoccupied storefront, or if perhaps these seating minimums are considered, like they're just precluded, so we don't even get those inquiries. But that would be something I could follow up with our economic development coordinator on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to emphasize too that I don't have a view into whether the potential business, theoretical, hypothetical business would necessarily be a positive or a negative. I think it would be helpful to understand what the range of options are. Because I think something new and innovative that would be of interest to the residents could be really interesting. And I think we just know what the possible implications are. If we were to go down to a really low minimum. And then I think that combined with maybe increasing some of the research on the surrounding towns, I think this is a good start, but a little more precision would be helpful to me.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Before you want to say something to Mr. Diggins, I just have one comment, and that raises the question based on what Mr. Feeney said about existing businesses. So for wine and malt beverage licenses for restaurants, we can issue an unlimited number, okay? But for all alcohol licenses, there is a limit, I believe. I'm looking at Ms. Myers at 21 that we can issue.
That's correct.
And we've probably issued between 14?
I think we're around 12 to 14.
Okay, all right. So I think that is an issue in terms of what we do. Maybe we don't address that one tonight, because I just as when we had the discussion on package stores, I'm just concerned. I want to know what we could issue beyond the 21 if we ask for more, and what effect that has on the marketplace. Because one thing that concerns me is a secondary market for these licenses, and really inhibiting people from coming into town because the cost of a license is so great because the number is so low. But Mr. Diggins?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You asked the question that I was going to ask, so that saved me some time on that. So then if we drop the wine and malt license requirement down to 0, we'd still need to figure out a number for the all alcohol license, right? So all right, so my inclination would be to take the wine and malt, down to 0, and then figure out what number we want, for the all alcohol license. And the compelling argument to me is the size, the space limitations that we have here in town, for, just the space that people can move into, and so yeah, I would say, if I were to pick a number for the wine and malt license, though, I was just going to say 10, because it gets us into double digits, but that's just so arbitrary on my part, and so generally, if I find myself doing something that's arbitrary, then it's like, well, why have a limit at all, Now, could I imagine a restaurant with 4 seats having a wine and malt license? I guess, but then I'd have to ask myself, why not allow that, And but Mr. Helmuth raises a theoretical question. It's like, well, what might you get, if you drop the number down that low? So that's worth exploring too. But my inclination, if it were up for a vote now, I would vote to have, no limit on the wine and malt licenses, and then we could figure out a number, for the all alcohol. That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diggins, and just a couple of comments, and I agree on the food that it's and Mr. Hurd made the point that the restaurant owner has a duty, right, not to overserve, and so that duty remains, maybe is even greater without this requirement, or as great. And I do think it's something that isn't enforced. I certainly could support that, and I think there seems to be consensus for that one. I think the 50 should be coming down for the all alcohol, but as I sit here and after hearing Mr. Helmuth's question, Mr. Feeney's answer, I don't have a number right now. I think there's still some outstanding questions. I think for me, I'd like to bring it back, even if it's the next meeting or the first meeting in February, because I do think we should act quickly on this, but maybe there's a little bit more information. And again, I'll do whatever the will of the board is in terms of voting on a motion, but I would certainly support. It would be eliminating sentences 2 and 3 of the food requirement. I think we're all comfortable that all places serving alcohol, food must be available, so we would keep that first sentence. But with that, I'll turn to Mr. Hurd.
I'll just make a note. I have a lot of friends that played hockey in Europe, and in Europe, they sell alcohol in the gyms. So as you think about the minimum seats, maybe you can bring that to Arlington. But I'll make a motion, but I'm not going to touch the seating capacity. I think we'll get more information on that. I'll just blatantly make a motion to eliminate any requirement for the for food, the 2-drink requirement. Do we have to be more specific than that?
No.
I think we can artfully cut through the language.
And I think with that language, again, the service of food, it's section E2, the first sentence will remain, and then what your motion, Mr. Hurd, is we would strike sentences 2 and 3, and I want to turn to Attorney Cunningham. Is that, any further comments on that?
That sounds good, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to say, just for I know the board knows this, but perhaps for the public as well, the board is the local licensing authority pursuant to Chapter 138 of the General Laws of Massachusetts, and the board is welcome to create any regulation it deems fit that is more stringent. However, the duty remains on any local license holding facility to comply with applicable state law and applicable Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission regulations. So whatever this board determines is an appropriate regulation, those public safety regulations remain in place.
Thank you, Attorney Cunningham. Okay, thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Any further comments? Mr. Diggins?
Well, just a quick question. I mean, I know we would do things to find out if people were serving underage people. Did our stings ever, deal with people serving alcohol, to people? Okay, I didn't think so.
I don't think we've ever done stings, have we? Isn't it the state?
We do compliance checks.
Yeah.
Okay,
using
that's what I
underage
meant.
individuals.
Yeah, sorry, wrong word. Sorry, So did we ever do compliance checks for serving, food, after the second drink?
Thank you, Mr. Diggins. I am not aware of any targeted compliance checks with respect to requiring the service of food, but I will note, at least at one point in history, when we sent someone in to do compliance checks, they were made to order food. And they did, and then were served.
They took advantage of the expense account.
Yes, that was the point.
Before, Attorney Cunningham, did you want to add something to what the?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to Mr. Diggins' question, I think in addition to local enforcement efforts, I also note that the state, to the extent that there are underage issues, the state does conduct on-site investigations, sting operations in localities to make sure that, establishments are complying with state law.
Thank you, Attorney Cunningham. Mrs. Mahan?
And I believe Mr. Helmuth seconded?
He did.
Okay. Just as moving forward, it sounds like it might be might be on a February agenda regarding the seat capacity. Quick question is there anything in terms of, I know when we initially were getting a sense of the residents and others regarding beer and wine, all alcohol, number of, we put non-binding I believe, my question is, were all the questions that we put on the ballot, and I don't have to have this answer tonight, maybe for the February meeting, if the Select Board's office or Town Council could look into, I know in the past we put on non-binding wording regarding alcohol, especially around all alcohol, to the voters. If we could just, and I think we've done that 2, if not 3 times, if somebody could find out what that is. And my quick question would be to the chair or through the chair, to Town Council, regarding the seat capacity around beer and wine and/or the all alcohol licenses, which I think it's 14 of the 21. If we were to do that, is there anything statutorily as a select board that we need to put to the voters, or no, would it again be what I believe has been done in the past, which is a non-binding referendum or questionnaire to the voters? Is there anything we have to do, or can we just unilaterally do that? And if the answer to that is there's nothing we have to do statutorily and we can move forward and do that, the discussion in February might want to be, if we do change, especially around the all alcohol, that seems to be the one in the past that everyone, so that's my question to you, through you.
Yeah, Attorney Cunningham, I don't know
If you understand my.
if you have an answer tonight, we didn't give you any advance notice on this, so if you want to come back to us, that's fine too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I do have an answer to Ms. Mahan's question. I think that, in general, as long as it's not in conflict with state law, or there's no requirement, as the local licensing authority of this board is under Chapter 138, does not need to go to the public for a specific vote on items. I can't foresee any particular issue that would be required. Obviously, non-binding referendum questions have been utilized in the past to gauge public sentiment on particular issues, and that can be useful for the board while it deliberates. However, I can't think of a particular scenario where the board would be required to go to the town for a required vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Anything further? Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Hurd, seconded by Mr. Helmuth, which would strike sentences, the second and third sentence from section E2 of our alcohol policy and regulations regarding the service of food. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and for the other one, we will come back on that, and Mrs. Mahan's probably right, we have a busy agenda for the end of January, so it might more likely be a February one. It might give us some more time, but we do want to act on that, and I appreciate the discussion this evening on that.
Let's make sure to discuss it like at 4 or 5 more meetings.
What's that?
Let's make sure to discuss it 4 or 5 more
Well,
meetings.
if we combine that with overnight parking, we could get it up to about 12 or 15.
You mean a discussion and possible vote,
Well,
but
yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
we
yeah.
won't,
Right.
agenda item?
And so this next one, speaking of discussion and potential vote, item 14, Select Board warrant articles for annual town meeting. We put this on here more or less just to let board members know. I was thinking we would have this, add warrant articles at the next meeting, which would be the last meeting in January, before the end of the month. We wanted to put this out just to alert members, think about warrant articles that we may want to add to the warrant. And I'm happy to open it up to any discussion now, but I was really looking for a vote, maybe later in the month, but just to get us going on that. Anybody? Okay, so we're all warned. Okay, so that one you will see again on our,
I'm mulling in my
January
head,
27th.
Mugar, I'm going to talk to you about Mugar and our CSO, but
yeah,
no.
and so we'll have that as a vote prior to the end of the warrant closing, so we'll do that at our next meeting. So with that, item 15, we are now in correspondence received, town manager vacation buyback, and we have a letter from Mr. Feeney on that. Mrs. Mahan?
Move receipt and move approval
Second.
on town manager buyback.
Right.
Although I have a feeling he may have more than 10 vacation days he didn't take, but we won't go there.
Okay, all right, so moving receipt and approval, motion made by Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Hurd. In favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, that is approved. We are now on to new business. Ms. Maher?
No new business, thank you.
Attorney Cunningham?
Very briefly, Mr. Chair, I just wanted, in follow-up to your point about warrant articles, remind the public that the warrant closes on the 31st of January. I thank those that have already reached out to the legal department for advice and counsel, and encourage anyone who's thinking about that to do so in a timely fashion so that we can get those prepared prior to the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Cunningham. Mr. Feeney?
No new business, thank you.
Mr. Diggins?
No new business.
Mrs. Mahan?
My new business sort of, and I didn't realize that Ms. Anderson was going to speak under Citizens Open Forum, so I didn't want to reply there. But regarding the January 22nd meeting with MWRA, which is listed as a public meeting, and but there is no really public participation. I checked the MWRA Advisory Board website, and I'm just trying to find an angle in on this, that's all. So I just want to put this out under new business and see if it can be. According to the MWRA Advisory Board website, which lists chief elected officials as designee and members, right now it has Mr. Rademacher and Mr. Helmuth on as our, and I'm not sure if either one knows. I think before it used to be Mr. Shunad, Wayne Shunad, and maybe that's why Mr. Rademacher's on there, but it does have Mr. Helmuth. So my question would be, I just want to put it out there, if either, if what's on the website is still legitimate, I don't mean to say legitimate, but is current and up to date, if we could ask either Mr. Rademacher or Mr. Helmuth to, in that capacity, contact and perhaps ask Mr. Feeney to do it on their behalf, the MWRA regarding the January 22nd meeting, and regarding MWRA's stance right now to not allow Save the Alewife, Mystic River Watershed, Charles River Watershed, and there's one more watershed group that have asked for 2 to 5 minutes to speak, and they've been told no. And where the website says that we have, an elected and an appointed official through Mr. Rademacher and Mr. Helmuth, if somehow perhaps they could speak to them and maybe speak on the town's behalf regarding the CSO issue, or delegate that responsibility to Mr. Feeney. If someone could just look into that, and/or if Mr. Rademacher and/or Mr. Helmuth, I don't mean to put you on the spot, because you may not even know your name is listed on there, either redesignate someone else, or maybe that's not my thing would be, if there's anything we can say, if there's not going to be any public participation, can at least the town of Arlington have, through one or both of its advisory board members, the opportunity, if we can't submit something public speaking followed up in writing, can we submit something in writing that has to be entered in as part of the record? So it's a reach, and I swear to God in the Bible, I didn't know Kristen was going to come in and also speak to that meeting. So, and if for some reason Mr. Helmuth and Mr. Rademacher and Mr. Feeney look into that, and there's no recourse or relief that in that way, then that's what it is. That's fine. I'm not going to be like, whatever. It's a long shot, but I would like to take it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan.
Thank you. I didn't mean Mr. Helmuth. Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. And through you, Mr. Feeney, to Mr. Rademacher. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahan. Mr. Helmuth? Next. You checking any of the committees here? Or?
I think, would it be okay for me to comment on that without this being a board deliberation for new business?
We're not, the rest of us aren't going to take a vote, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this may just be as simple as by the fact that I was chair that one year, and I think it's all, so I don't have any, really have any stake in this, or any knowledge, I should say. So I'm happy for the town manager to take appropriate action, would be my view. I did have a question, Mr. Chair, since this will also not involve a board vote or deliberation tonight, but if I could take the opportunity to ask the town manager for an update on the very unfortunate pedestrian fatality at Dundee Road and Mass Ave back in November, and Harlan Kunklins unfortunately died at that crosswalk, and I'm in receipt, the town manager is in receipt of a letter signed by many dozens of neighbors there, asking the town to investigate. I certainly passed on the town manager's information that there's been a long and perhaps delayed investigation by the state police, which we were required to turn that over to. But I'd love to know if there's an update on what the town knows about the circumstances of the accident, and any plans we have for further public education, including potentially early steps the town may be making to add that location to a list of action items.
Mr. Feeney?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. You are correct that we are still not in receipt of any final investigative report or findings from the state police or the district attorney's office, so we don't yet have a crystal clear understanding of what may have occurred in that particular circumstance. I will note that, that particular location had been evaluated by the Transportation Advisory Committee pre-pandemic, and it did have some bulleted action items that the town took in 2019, and then we did, I will note, add another streetlight directly over that crosswalk in 2023, and performed some other work to remove some signage that had been obstructing sightlines, and make more formal some no parking restrictions in that area. But with that said, it was noted at that time that there is a significant crossing distance at that intersection. And, I've personally visited the intersection a number of times since that incident occurred, and I did notice that there seemed to be a lot of parking there for vehicles that tend to have higher tops, likely because there is a store frequented by a lot of home improvement contractors nearby. So as we performed an initial analysis of the site, because we would, hopefully this construction season, like to construct bump outs to shorten the crossing distance, but also to create the necessary real estate, for lack of a better word, to consider the installation and implementation of a rectangular rapid flash beacon. But for that to be most effective, we need to get it sort of beyond the parking lane and into a better sight line for traffic in both directions. So we have done some preliminary analysis of that scope of work to cost it out and to also understand, in making those civil improvements to the curb lines and adding sidewalk, what impacts there may be to drainage and what structures may need to be moved. So we've done some preliminary analysis there, just based on our analysis and recommendations from many years ago, since we don't have anything more current, but should we get additional information, we can certainly evaluate those circumstances.
Thank you very much, Mr. Finney. I appreciate the thoroughness and thoughtfulness of your information.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. Mr. Hurd?
I just had one thing that I wanted to mention that I saw yesterday as I was in the Heights. There used to be a post office in the Heights, right? And now the post office isn't there. There's still a no parking, and I don't know if there's some regulation because there's mailboxes there, but I think there's other places in town where there's parking in front of mailboxes. So it's a pretty high demand parking space. So in the event that there's no regulation that requires us to have no parking there, I think it would be good to look into whether we could give that back to the patrons of Arlington Heights.
And I think, I'm going to turn to Mr. Finney on that. That is going to be addressed in one of our future meetings. But Mr. Finney, if you want to just address that briefly, because I think there will be a proposed change.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hurd. We already do have a draft recommendation for exactly that location. What we're trying to fine tune is there is a desire for some sort of short-term loading or commercial type parking in the Heights, as we saw in Arlington Center. And does the sort of reclamation of that curb space provide that opportunity either in that location or a more proximal location that could serve as, daytime short-term commercial use, but also serve, business patrons in the Heights at other times of day. So I think the board will see a recommendation on that, perhaps even at the next meeting.
I think it's just comment generally about parking in the Heights is, especially up near the Trader Joe's Starbucks area, seems to be a lot of, if there was a way to have some sort of spot enforcement of people, because I feel like Starbucks people are pretty egregious offenders. I'm one of them. Not an offender, but I'm a Starbucks person. Where it's like, I'm just going to park across this sidewalk this crosswalk while I run in and get my mobile order, then the mobile order's not ready. So that area with, a parking lot that's kind of crazy, and then just, so many businesses competing for the limited number of parking creates parking issues that you see all the time. So, I think as part of the process that we look at that, we see if, there's some way to better enforce the rules that are already in place.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Oh, Mr. Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Hurd, you provide me the opportunity. I just want to note and sort of thank the Arlington Police Department for increasing their enforcement efforts of late. I did recently receive a report from the chief that, you know, based on the incident that occurred in November, we put our heads together and really wanted to direct more resources and what we call directed patrols, especially at crosswalks, but also to maintain a very visible presence in the business districts, and that did result in about a 24% increase in citations issued in the month of December as opposed to November, and those efforts are continuing into the new year in January, and I'll be able to report back at that in the future. So we are taking enforcement seriously, especially in our business districts and especially at crosswalks.
Yeah, I will note for the benefit of Starbucks patrons, the only people more egregious are the people that pick up their kids at Downs School after school. I'm often seen knocking on windows, telling people that they're literally parking across crosswalks while kids are trying to cross the street, so.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. I have two or three items. I apologize for the time, but we had, over the past several months, I've given updates on the Mugar hearing before the Conservation Commission. The next hearing is scheduled for this Thursday, January 16th, and I note that it is an in-person hearing. So this will be the first time the Conservation Commission meets in person since the pandemic, and they'll be doing it by remote participation as well. Right now, it's scheduled to take place in the second floor conference room in the annex, and I will be talking to Mr. Feeney, maybe to pass along to Mr. Morgan, if this is going to go forward, because there's still some doubt whether it may be continued, but I'd like to offer, if they need a bit larger venue within Town Hall, happy to work with you and send that message along to them, because I think if it does go forward, there'll be a number of people who will be interested in seeing that. So that's this Thursday. It had been continued several times. There is updated information that the consultant for the applicant has submitted, but the town's peer reviewer may not be done by Thursday on that. So I wanted to point that out to the public. Did you have a?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, okay.
No,
So that's update on Mugar. Second thing, happy to report, today is Monday, and at least in my neighborhood, both trash and recycling were picked up. And I know it was a difficult time over the holiday break, and a source of frustration for residents, and believe me, it's a source of frustration for everybody at Town Hall and at DPW, and we are working with Republic. But one thing I did talk to Mr. Feeney about that we may do, or it's a suggestion, I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but between Christmas and New Year's, we had an issue with trash not being picked up. Recycling came by and there was a delay, and it caused a lot of concern. And I don't know if any of you have called the Republic number, but if you try that number, it's as frustrating an experience as you're ever going to encounter. And right now, as part of our contract with Republic, residents are encouraged to call Republic if they don't receive a pickup. After hours, you're basically asked as if you're a private vendor. It just doesn't, it's very difficult to get anywhere. So I did talk to Mr. Feeney, at least for the remainder of this contract, if we may roll out a different mechanism for people to call through the town, compile a list, and get out there. And I understand that's not looking to create more work for town employees, but I think there's a better way to maybe communicate with Republic. And I know there are separate communications being made by our recycling coordinator, by Ms. Bongiorno and the deputy town manager. But I think for residents, if a couple days go by and you're still frustrated about your trash pickup and you call Republic and get thrown into voicemail, it just compounds the problem. So I know there's work being done on that. I talked to Mr. Feeney, he's looking into it, and we may have something to report on that.
Can I just ask on that?
It's certainly.
Since you and Mr. Feeney are looking into that, the conversation I had about 7-8 months ago, and I believe Charlotte Milan may have also reinforced this. Could you follow up on what I was told by Republic is when residents call in that they need to get in or need to be given a work order number of that call and that request. And somehow, and that's the way Ms. Milan and others can follow up on it. So if you can find out from Republic, is that true? And then if that is the case, we need to sort of do a public service announcement. The manager can do it in his town hall update to say for the remainder of this contract, if it's true that the big thing is getting that work order number, which will make it easier for town employees to follow up when a resident calls and says, so if you can find out if that's
No,
true. If it is,
and I
then
know
that's-
you get a question from Republic, what's your customer number? And
Oh, you
because
do? Okay.
it's private customers that are calling that as well. So that's a flaw in the,
Okay, I'll let
in
you
the
and
Republic
Mr.
system. But
Feeney- okay, yeah.
we can,
Yep, that's fine.
we can discuss that. But it's just, it's been a challenge, and this isn't, it's not on, it's with our vendor. We don't pick up the trash, and I want to reiterate, everybody in town, whether it's DPW, whether it's Ms. Milan, Mr. Feeney, Ms. Bongiorno, they're on top of this every day in terms of what's going on and making constant calls. It's a source of frustration for them too, but I just think, one person commented to me, and I had the experience too, when I called Republic, I was asked what my email address was, what's my phone number, and people don't really want to do that, right? They want their trash picked up, but they don't want to give a lot of information to the private vendor. So we're working on that, and I think, maybe there'll be some sort of alternative for that. But bear in mind, I also want to say, and I've heard this from Mr. Feeney, I heard it from Mr. Rademacher, and the town is going through neighborhoods too every day, and when things aren't picked up, they're notifying Republic as well. So there is a lot of follow-up. It's just the execution of the contract that's been difficult. Third thing, and this is like an expanded new business, I'm sorry. On a lighter note, happy to report over the holidays that if you go down Mass Ave through Arlington Center, the Papagino sign is no longer there. And that is I get more questions from, well, my son was in college and sees his friends. What is the Papagino sign doing there? So that has been removed, so that is some progress. Again, that's the private owner of that property, but it's gone now, so a success.
I think that's on display in the Smithsonian.
It might be. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
Second.
Okay, a motion to adjourn by Mr. Helmuth, seconded by Mr. Diggins. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.